Story 1. I went to pick up my Xbox 360 that a friend had been borrowing, and our whole group was there. They had spent the entire day playing games with snacks and pizza, and I had not been invited. I felt like the one who takes the ball home and ruins the fun for everyone. I took my Xbox and never spoke to anyone in that group again. Story 2. Back in my first year of college, I had a group of friends, about 7 people including me. We used to hang out together and had a group chat where we discussed everything from class subjects to random topics. After a year, I noticed that one of the guys, Randy, kept getting excluded. He was not invited or informed about hangouts while others talked behind his back. The unofficial leader of the group created a new group chat and invited everyone, including me except Randy, without telling him. I know what it feels like to be left out. I experienced that in middle school and it is awful. I stopped hanging out with the group and started spending time with Randy. He is eccentric but a very good person at heart. We have been friends for more than 6 years, and he still has my back. Story 3. Onerous, heavy, adjoining, absurd, tender, ripe, crowd, jobless, hunt, impossible. Story 4. Whenever we planned to hang out, they were busy with our mutual friends. Story 5. When I was babysitting her kids, things were going great. We would hang out, have movie nights, and just talk and chill. But the moment she no longer needed a babysitter, I was kicked to the curb. She gave no explanation and did not even text back. Some people act like your best friend until they no longer need you. They're lost, though. Story 6. When I was in school, all my friends and I studied different advanced level subjects. Although we had different lessons, they would wait for each other to go to lunch, but they would always forget me. I would come out and they would not be there, so I had lunch by myself. When they came back, they told me they thought I was with them. I was the only one they did not wait for. I have seen only one of them since we left school. She had forgotten my name. That was hurtful. Story 7. I was once told, "I'm trying to hang out with my real friends." That was an oof. Story 8. Damn, bro. This thread has taught me that people are really shitty. Story 9. When my phone was stolen, I lost their phone numbers. My number stayed the same, but we never talked again. Story 10. When I returned to work after being off for 3 months because of an injury, I practically begged 3 coworkers to grab a beer and do pub trivia, but they all said they had plans. I later found on social media that their plans were to go without me. They deleted the post shortly afterward. Since I deleted social media, I have been much less depressed. I stopped looking at them as friends and now see them only as work acquaintances. It took that for me to realize the friendships were one-sided, and I am better off being cordial at work. Story 11. When I traded in my truck for a smaller, more eco-friendly vehicle, communication plummeted because I cannot haul furniture, assist with moving as much, or dispose of garbage. Story 12. I was invited to a bachelorette party for a friend in the group. At the party, I realized I was the only person not invited to the wedding. They had invited me because they needed another person to share the expenses. Story 13. When I went through a divorce, I was down to $700. It was the most difficult period, and it weeded out all those who only friend me for my generosity because I had been well settled. I started over and now have 2 true friends. Edit. Thank you all for your well wishes and wisdom-filled comments. It is incredible how sometimes you receive more support from strangers than from people who pretended to be your supporters. Story 14. I flew out to support a friend going through a messy divorce. While I was there, she left me in the apartment to meet her boyfriend, whom I did not know about. He had just been released from prison for manslaughter. I told her I did not want to spend time with him given the reason for my visit. The next night, I woke to find him in the living room. She said she thought it would be all right since I was asleep. The next day, she invited her soon-to-be ex-husband over without telling me, then asked me to mediate their conversation once he arrived. The conversation turned ugly, and she stormed out. He broke down and asked if I thought the relationship could be salvaged. I told him she had already moved on. It was not my best idea, but by then she had shown me how vile she could be. Story 15. After my divorce, we were friends as a couple, not as individuals. Story 16. One friend stopped replying to my texts the same week we graduated from college. I realized I had been kept as a study buddy, so I would continue helping them. Story 17. I found out they have an inner circle group chat, and I am the only one who is not in it. Story 18. Once high school ended, I heard all the rumors they made up about me. Story 19. The group planned to meet and hang out. I was getting ready at the salon when a couple of friends had to back out. Another friend then made excuses, and I could tell. I tried cajoling him and offering suggestions for how he could come, but he decided to cancel the whole meetup. It was my birthday. Story 20. I would not say I have fake friends, but I am definitely a peripheral friend. Most of the time, if there are not enough tickets or space in the car, I am the one who gets left out. It does not bother me much, but I wish they would be more mindful when they talk about things we supposedly did together. For example, they will say, "Remember when we went to see that show," and ask if it was fun, even though I was not invited. It becomes awkward when they add that they would have invited me if they had had the tickets or space, which feels like an excuse. Story 21. My friends from high school all unfollowed me when I graduated college. I'm the only one who no longer lives in our hometown. Story 22. My so-called friends invited me to a party. At the last moment, they texted the group saying no one was coming and that the party was canceled. They held the party that day without me because they decided they did not want me there. It hurt a lot. It was a terrible day for me. Story 23. This was several years ago. My former partner and I were close friends with another couple. We did many activities together. Then they moved not far away, and shortly thereafter my former partner and I separated. They spent time with me for a few months, then stopped calling. Several years later, I ran into both of them at a race, an ultramarathon, and they both pretended not to know me. That was a painful moment. Story 24. This friend, I will call her Mary, had kids the same age as mine. We got together for play dates pretty often, and our kids would sleep over at each other's houses on weekends. I liked Mary. We often visited and talked while our kids played. One weekend her kids stayed at my house. The older one called her mother to ask when she was coming to pick her up. I was in the room, and the child put the phone on speaker for some reason. Mary told the child what time she would be there and added, "You had better be waiting outside. If I have to go in and spend the next hour talking to River Tam, I am going to be really pissed." We did not spend much time together after that. I am getting a lot of similar questions and comments, so I will add an edit here instead of writing the same answer a dozen times. Did I overreact? Was Mary just having a bad day and not wanting to talk? And my personal favorite, River Tam, maybe you are just insufferable? Here is what happened after I overheard my friend say that to her child. I simply stopped initiating contact and was not as available to do things for her. When we dropped off or picked up the kids, I smiled and waved. I let the kids make the plans for play dates. I no longer had time to help her with her garden or watch her children while she went out with another friend. They were into long-distance running, which was not my cup of tea. She never contacted me unless she wanted something. This had always been true, but I had not realized it. The friendship eventually fizzled out on its own. So I guess it had never been much of a friendship to begin with. I just did not realize it until she opened my eyes. Story 25. When you lose your worth to them, they may leave, especially if you are going through a dark period in your life and treat you as if you are a worthless bag of dust. Story 26. I was at a party, very depressed after a bad breakup, and became intoxicated. My abusive ex showed up, found me alone, and assaulted me. I begged several friends for help because I was too intoxicated to get home by myself, but they ignored me. My former best friend was there, completely sober, and refused to drive me home because she did not believe he would do that. There is no ride-sharing service in my country, by the way. The situation escalated. A man I did not know found me in a field, crying and vomiting, brought me back to the house, made a bed of blankets for me, and sat guard all night to make sure my ex did not hurt me again. Story 27. When I realized I was always the one calling, I stopped, and my friends disappeared. Story 28. When you try to open up and share a genuine conversation about something going on in your life and all they can do is crack jokes and try to get you to go out drinking, it made me realize how surface level many friendships really are. Then you have the opposite of that. 3 guys I have known since I was a freshman in high school. We have been friends for over 15 years. We have stayed in touch through marriage, raising children, and moving to completely separate areas of the country. Yet whenever we are within an hour of each other, we always make a point to get breakfast and catch up. These conversations usually last 3 hours or more. This may only happen once or twice a year, but I consider those guys my best friends. That is real friendship, and I am fortunate to have them. Story 29. When my longtime friend called and asked, "Hey, can you hang out?" No one else can. Story 30. I got sober 7 months ago today. I always promised myself I would not edit to say thank you, but here I am. Your love and kind words brought tears to my eyes. Story 31. As I suspect for many people, getting divorced was a real eye-opener. I started with a core group of close friends who had all met in our late teens and early 20s. One of them introduced me to the woman I would ultimately marry. Well into our 40s, they were what I considered my family, but when the divorce happened, things spiraled. My best friend stuck with me, but his wife had been the organizer in our group and she was best friends with my ex. I expected them to insulate for a while, and I knew it was painful for my ex to be around me, so it was no surprise when I stopped getting invitations to cookouts and similar gatherings. Then I noticed other members of the group were also avoiding or ignoring me. I would see on Facebook that one of them came into my town for a concert by a band they knew I liked and had not so much as texted. Birthdays rolled around and nobody called. When my parents both died within a few months of each other and not one of them reached out, I knew where I stood. My best friend deserves credit. Apart from all of them, he made a consistent effort to stay in touch and see me regularly. He was there when my parents died and through everything else, even though his wife clearly disapproved. Finally, after this nonsense had gone on for several years, he told her how ridiculous it all seemed and the entire friend group tried to reconcile. I made it clear from the start that there was no guarantee I would find space for them in my life again. This is all very apropos right now because they are having their first big party since the coronavirus disease 2019 pandemic in a couple of weeks, and I am invited. People are coming in from all over the country, and the only person I care about seeing is my buddy. Story 32. After they abandoned me during a rough time, and after I spent years listening to and supporting them, I had my first real moment when I wasn't coping and needed help. They were nowhere to be found and were talking behind my back. That's when I realized my high school friends hadn't grown up past high school. Luckily, I had other friends, though not a large girl group like that. I can honestly say every friend I have has my back and wouldn't judge me if I'm not always happy. And I feel the same for them. I've always had high expectations of myself as a friend, and everyone I call a friend brings something special to my life. That is worth more than having a huge group of friends who turn on each other when someone leaves the room. Took me a long time to realize. Story 33. I realized that just being in the same room as that person made me miserable. They were extremely self-conscious, to the point of overcompensating by putting others down at every opportunity to feel superior. I kept wondering why they would throw me under the bus for no reason. We had been friends for years, so why would they treat me like that? It took me a long time to see how bad a friend they were, despite how hard they tried to hide it. I had to cut them off and ignore their calls and messages for an entire year because they could not understand why someone would stop spending time with them. Story 34. One friend at university tried to steal my animation coursework, claim it as his own, and have me expelled for allegedly stealing his work. I had help setting things up from one of my tutors and professors so I could film the coursework. He was instead expelled and blacklisted from the university and from any other university in the United Kingdom offering the same subject. The people running animation programs at universities in the United Kingdom knew each other and communicated regularly. There were fewer than half a dozen universities offering animation degrees at the time. This was about 20 years ago. Story 35. My friends created a Facebook account for a fake girl who was transferring to our school and completely catfished me, only revealing it was a scam when I arrived at a movie theater to meet her. Was I dumb? Yes. Were they awful? Undoubtedly. Story 36. My best friend of 10 years called on my wedding day to say she couldn't make it because she was so sad about her recent divorce. Turned out she had a date. Our whole friendship was fake, and it took that moment for me to realize it. Story 37. For me, it was when I got into serious trouble and everyone cast me aside without a second thought. I realized this when I invited them to the movies and they all said they could not go. Later, I learned from one of them that they had seen the same movie that day. When I asked why they had not told me, they said, "We just wanted to go together." That broke my heart. Story 38. I stopped smoking weed and they stopped coming around. Update. That is a lot of upvotes. I am sorry that so many of you seem to have had similar experiences. You will make new friends if you have not already. To the people saying there is nothing wrong with this, I would like to respectfully disagree. These were people I considered close friends. It was not just some men and women I shared a hobby with. Please do not be so quick to judge when you have very little context. Story 39. Don't confuse fake friends with people becoming adults. It is normal for adults to lose touch with older, close friends because of life circumstances such as children, distance, work, and so on. That does not mean they are fake friends. It means they have higher priorities than hanging out or chatting as they used to. You will often find those friends are happy to see you when either they or you make it easy and convenient. That can be frustrating, but it is a normal part of growing up and likely something you will experience too. Postscript. The post-college period is the most jarring because everyone becomes an adult at a different pace. People will drift away, and if you are not ready yet, it can feel like they are dropping you as a friend. Make it easy for them and you will likely pick things up right where you left off. Story 40. This is a good post because it can help many people. In college, I hung out with a group like the people in this thread. They were my roommates for 3 years. Every year we threw a party for everyone's birthday except mine. They did not even know when my birthday was. After I graduated and looked back, I realized they were never my friends. I do not hear from them anymore. I spent 4 years socializing with the wrong people. If I had spent time with people I had thought were nerds or annoying, or with people I had more in common with, I would probably have enjoyed my undergraduate years much more. Fortunately, I have much better friends now than the ones I had then. Story 41. I learned this after graduating high school and again after college. Graduation is the ultimate test of who your true friends are versus those who were drinking buddies or whom you hung out with because you disliked the same cliques. Story 42. On this note, if anyone wants a new friend, contact me. Story 43. When they walked past me crying, they pretended I did not exist. Story 44. I realized I was the background friend. People always called me when they had a problem and needed help. My job is the kind people expect me to do for free, so conversations would start with, "Hey, how are you?" and quickly become, "I'm having this issue with something work-related." I stopped answering outside my defined work hours and directed people to my work email. Apparently that makes me an asshole and I fell off people's radar. I'm not sure how I feel. I'm married, so I mostly hang out with my husband. I also have 2 dogs and 2 horses, and I love being with them. I like to grab a book and a picnic lunch, ride out with the animals, find a cool spot and just exist. I'm reading, the dogs are playing, and the horses are grazing. Life is honestly not that bad. Story 45. When someone rolls their eyes behind your back, I swear they do not have peripheral vision. Story 46. When they thought it was lame that I decided to get sober. Story 47. In my 4th year of high school, I discovered a large portion of my so-called friends had been meeting every week for the past 4 years to watch Community, and they never mentioned it or invited me. At the end of my 4-year university program, I saw on Snapchat that 99% of my program was throwing a huge house party, and no one invited me. Story 48. A lot of so-called friends are not real friends. They are more like acquaintances, people you know and are civil with. At least one friend may be fake. They keep you in their life solely to benefit from you, whether financially, emotionally, or because they thrive on your failures. Some people keep you around as something to gawk at. Harsh but true. Story 49. I had a friend in college who displayed troubling tendencies. Quick to anger and very insecure and paranoid about friendships and relationships. She became my roommate after she failed to get into the sorority most of her real friends were in. After a tumultuous few months of her constant hostile behavior, I realized how toxic she was. After graduating, she reunited with her friends and I never heard from her again. I felt relieved, but it still hurt to realize I could be so disposable to someone. Story 50. In middle school, I hung out with a group who treated me like dog shit. I was always the one they made fun of, the punching bag of the group. I stayed because they were the only friends I had. One day I realized they all sucked. At lunch, I told them they were all dickheads. They laughed, and I sat alone. I was alone until my junior year of high school, when I told my parents the big city was not for me. My parents sacrificed everything and moved to Montana. I enrolled in a small school and did not know a soul. I decided to join the football team. That was the best choice I ever made. I met new friends who I am still friends with 15 years later. Story 51. I owned a pickup truck. It was surprising how many friends stopped wanting to hang out after I got rid of it. About 6 months after I traded the truck for a car, a friend called. We talked briefly and he asked what I was doing the next day. I said I was going to wash my new car. He must have been moving and did not know I no longer had the pickup. He ended the conversation soon after, and I never heard from him again. Story 52. I wondered why the house was so quiet in the morning. I did not hear anyone moving in their rooms or entering through the front door. By lunchtime, I realized they were gone. They came back in the evening after spending the day at the beach together. I felt a little hollow inside, but I did not get sunburn, so I had that going for me. Story 53. When one of them tried to kiss me, I dodged. Later, he held my head in place and kissed me on the lips, then had me kicked out of the group by telling everyone I had tried to force myself on him. Story 54. When my best friend became close with the man who abused me for 2 years, I was devastated. She knew everything and still formed that friendship. When I confronted her, she said he was a nice man who was misunderstood, that my abuse never happened, and that my other friend, who had integrity and reached out to me with screenshots when he attempted to contact her, was making him look bad. She threw away a 4-year friendship in that moment. She was also sending him screenshots of our private conversations and updating him about me, even when he had a new girlfriend. Edit. They were not having an affair. They only became really close a year after the breakup, which was around the same time he began reaching out to a number of my other friends to manipulate them. Story 55. Accidentally overdosing on a drug and ending up in the hospital, I reached out and messaged those friends who said, "Message me if you need anything." When I asked them to feed my cat, check the mail, contact my family who do not use the internet, or just talk to me, the response was, "Let me know if you need anything." It was as though saying that somehow ignored what I was telling them I needed. I learned people say this when they do not know what to say or do not want to actually help. Here I am, in a hospital bed, asking for the help they offered. I have helped them, but now that I need basic support while being treated, no one is there, not even family. I have visited friends, hosted events for them, and helped them in many ways for years. Yet if I ask to be visited or for help, nothing happens. Sometimes they do not even tell me they cannot show up for things like my birthday until hours after the party has started. Some people just take from you, dropping figurative social coins so you will show up for them, but they may never show up for you. I have spent years asking someone what it would take for them to visit, and they showed up once in over 5 years. I feel like an idiot for having invested so much of myself, time, money, and genuine love, only to realize they will not reciprocate. We're friends for life now, some have said, and we have shared deep things, but it is always in public chat groups and we never converse privately. I have learned some people know how to be empathetic and seem caring, but often all they care about is a performative friendship, the show of friendship. When you genuinely want to talk and open up about a conflict or ask for help to work through something, they are not there for that. They are there for the superficial and entertaining, the positive only. The negative is not what they are there for. I do not know anymore what a real friendship is. I am left wondering if I am the problem. The proverb, "if everyone is the problem, then it is you," rings in my head. I must be the problem because every relationship has similar issues. A lack of genuine connection. If I start to open up and share genuine feelings, it becomes a burden. Most of the time I am just asking to be heard. Nothing more, and I only do this when it feels like it could be accepted. I do not open up until rapport feels safe. But even then, there is the risk that we are not compatible. Or maybe I am completely wrong and have a severe issue I need to address that I am not seeing. I have been in therapy for a while and my consistent issue is that I am emotionally confused about myself. In short, I do not know. Story 56. I had a pretty bad bout of depression, the kind where it is extremely hard not to drive into a wall. I tried to talk about it with a man I considered my best friend at the time. He basically said I was being stupid and ignored me for the rest of the evening. A week later, I noticed that no one in the group was texting me, so I waited to see how long it would take them to notice I was not around. A year later, I confronted one of them and expressed my disappointment, and that was the last time I saw, spoke to, or heard from any of them. About a year after that, one of my exes from the group tried to be friends. I let something slip, and through a friend of a friend, I learned she had been talking about it with the old group. I texted her later that week to say I did not think we could be friends anymore because I needed someone trustworthy, not someone looking for gossip. Story 57. I realized I didn't matter. Everyone was talking about what they did when they hung out with others, and there I was, always uninvited. At first I thought it was normal. They had not known me long, but soon a girl they had met the same day I had was invited everywhere. I thought it was because my parents were strict, until I realized I had never told them that. I was merely a toy to them, there only if no one else was around. I was that dumb Loic. At the time, I had recently escaped long-term bullying. I was too focused on protecting myself to start over, and I did not see that I was living something worse. If anyone wants to be friends with a dumb 16-year-old, I am here. Story 58. I found a huge skeleton in my family's closet, and it messed me up for months. I explained to my so-called friends that I was going through a lot and that it would take time to talk about it. When it did take time, they were angry that I did not trust them enough to go through it together. I told them after a couple of months. And I went to therapy, but they said they did not care if I got better. One friend told me that my existence bothered them. We were all roommates, and I moved out in secret because they were intentionally causing anxiety attacks by banging on my door at night, preventing me from entering the kitchen to eat, and other similar actions. Story 59. The idea of fake friends fades in the adult world and is often replaced by toxic relationships. When you are forced to be around people at school, church, or in a dorm, you can be taken advantage of, ignored on a whim, or abused, yet still have to interact with them every day simply because you share the same space. In the adult world, it is easier to remove people from your life or set clear boundaries. Toxic relationships often stem from codependency or other factors that make you feel trapped. Friendships that drift apart over time are usually the natural ebb and flow of life. Story 60. When I told her I was suicidal and having panic attacks, I never heard from her again. Story 61. They told me I was being too emotional a month after my father passed away. Story 62. When I broke up with my long-term boyfriend, the man I thought had been my best friend of 3 years waited 2 weeks before asking if it was his turn. Fucking garbage. Story 63. Vex and stuff. For me, it was the same as for Stratobits. I did not go bankrupt. I intervened when 3 men were assaulting another man. After I stopped them, the 3 men turned on me. I suffered 2 collapsed lungs, many broken bones, a pneumothorax, brain damage, and my mouth was frothing pink because my lungs were full of blood. I also had a couple of cardiac arrests and ongoing cognitive issues. As a result, I lost my house, my job, my savings, my 401k retirement account, and everything I owned except a car. I was not good enough for my sister and for all but 5 of my closest friends. My wife stayed with me through it all, and without her I would never have made it. My remaining friends gave me hundreds of dollars, a registered and insured van, a new job, restored faith in humanity, and the support I needed to get back on my feet. It was all about money. It taught me a very valuable lesson about people. You learn who is behind the curtain. Story 64. One of them dated my sister and stopped talking to me. Story 65. When I realized that what he really wanted was to use me to break into my circle of friends and claim them for himself. Story 66. This is my mother's story. My mother had two friends she visited twice a month. One of them spoke poorly of her, and the other friend believed her. One night we went to visit, and they spoke very little to my mother. She knew they no longer considered her a friend. 3 years later we moved not far away, and my mother saw the friend who had believed the other woman. They simply walked quickly away from her. Worst of all, I used to play with their children like an older brother. They could have at least said hello, including the husband, but the woman pulled them away. It is painful that some friendships end because of people like that, and the husband and children could do nothing. In summary, a friend manipulated another into hating my mother, and my mother stopped spending time with them. Story 67. Around the same time I realized that I was not as good a friend as I could have been. I was 29. I spent most of my 20s being very cavalier about my work and career, having no discipline whatsoever, and I attracted a group of friends who were similar and, in some ways, more extreme than I was. Over the course of a few years we adopted a work hard, play hard archetype but skipped the work part. When I was 29 I was beginning to tire of it and my body could not keep up with the irregular lifestyle. When I started talking about this to my friends, I realized they were more interested in keeping me in that self-destructive loop than in actually hearing me out. At the same time I realized that my one-dimensional portrayal of myself to them in prior years had been less than honest, so I could not really blame them. In their eyes I was not being myself. Perhaps they were fake friends in that they did not want me to improve my circumstances, but I was equally fake in that I had misrepresented myself a little. We drifted apart after that. Story 68. When I fell asleep while camping, I heard endless bad-mouthing about me. The man was a jerk and a bully to me when I was awake. I am surprised I put up with it for so long. It is hard when it is mixed with genuine brotherhood and friendship. Story 69. They absconded with large amounts of my money and involved me in complex legal disputes that could have sent me to prison. Story 70. I've told this story before, so I'll keep it short. I called several friends to see if they wanted to hang out. Everyone said they were busy with family and other things. Except one guy who said, "Tonight? But Lauren's party is tonight. Did you forget?" I wasn't invited. They posted pictures of it the next day. Thanks, gang. Story 71. When she told me she was just being kind so I would not kill myself, I knew she was aware I struggle with depression. She blew it out of proportion and used me to make herself feel better, as if she were performing a public service. Story 72. I was fired because someone in my circle was jealous of my success and started bad-mouthing me behind my back. I lost my job and my circle of friends, even though I could and did prove the accusations were lies. They still sided with that person. I had helped several of them during hard times by finding jobs and getting them into interviews. When I lost my job, they all ghosted me. They proved that a friend is just an asshole who has not yet had the chance to backstab you. Story 73. The day I told my friends and even family that I was going to be a father, many relationships fell apart. When my daughter was born, people stopped responding and began ignoring my texts and calls. I was removed from some group chats and from social media, including Facebook. Now I have a handful of childhood friends and a few family members who still see my daughter and me as family. It is what it is. I am not tripping. Story 74. 2 months after school ended, the last so-called friend stopped texting me, and I never heard from them again. Story 75. I had a seizure, and they would not drive me to the hospital because they had a brunch to attend. Story 76. When I trusted them with a very personal secret, they told others even though I begged them not to. They ruined my career and my life after 18 years of being close friends. Story 77. Consider the 2 beers and a puppy rule of thumb. If you would have 2 beers with them but not trust them with your puppy, they are fun to hang out with and chat with, but likely unreliable for practical matters. If you would trust them with your puppy but not have 2 beers with them, they are dependable for practical help, even if blunt or unpleasant. If you would want both, a great friend. If neither, seriously rethink this relationship. Story 78. I noticed most of the conversations were started by me, and they would always hang out without me. They also told me, "Can you reduce being gay? It makes me uncomfortable because I cannot relate to it." Story 79. When I got divorced, I realized my friends were actually my ex-husbands. I haven't spoken to any of them in more than 6 years. Story 80. I read this as, when did you realize your friends were actually family? I wasn't prepared for the lack of uplifting stories. Story 81. After reading these comments, I feel better about being someone who never got too close and who does not have many friends. Jesus, what a bunch of horrible stories. Story 82. When I went bankrupt, I lost $2 million in net worth and both of my homes. The comments below tell the story. I learned the hard way who my friends were and who were not friends at all. Story 83. When I did not have what they desired or could use me for, my real friends came around regardless. Story 84. I could not say anything without it turning into a fight. It culminated in their attempt to cancel me before they disappeared from my life. Story 85. My wife needed to go to the airport. I did not have a car and Uber is not cheap, so I asked a friend if they could give us a ride because the airport was on their way to the club they visit on weekends. They agreed reluctantly, but neither called nor showed up when it was time to leave. I did not call them because I felt they did not want to help. I was on my way to the bus stop when we ran into them. With no other option, they said they had forgotten and offered to drive us. In the car, they taunted us about buying a car. We did not speak again after that. Story 86. When my spouse died and I was still grieving 3 months later, I lost a couple of friends, including one who had been my best friend for 20 years. A few friends stayed with me through everything, including those who formed a pod with me during coronavirus disease 2019. I really learned what friendship means. Story 87. She encouraged me to apply for a job, then became angry when I got the job and stopped communicating with me. Story 88. I used to be a mechanic. It is staggering how many people were friends with me because they needed me to fix things for them. Story 89. When we had sex, he basically wanted nothing to do with me afterward. 2 years of what I thought was a friendship thrown away for bad sex and 20 seconds of disappointment. Story 90. I've seen a lot of posts about money. I suggest not lending friends money. Give it to them or do not. In my humble opinion, I am not a bank. How much does it bother you when you lend someone $20? Then a week later you see them post a photo at Starbucks. You spent $8 on that coffee. Where is the $20 you owe me? Story 91. When they allowed the people who bullied me to remain in the friend group. Story 92. I started therapy and stopped using social media such as Instagram. I went 2 months without anyone checking in on me. It has been almost 6 months and still nothing. I moved on and began taking care of myself. Story 93. When I invited everyone in the group chat out for my birthday drinks, male, 33. One person was on time. The rest of my so-called friends went fishing and arrived 4 hours later. When my girlfriend was rounding up the group to continue drinking at a bar that closed later, I said we would get a table and asked them to catch up. They just looked at me vacantly because they had not finished their drinks. They had turned up late. They bailed without even saying goodbye. Great birthday. Story 94. I realized the only time I heard from them was when they needed something from me. I thought I had a very good group of friends throughout high school and college, but after graduation their contact was always about favors. They bought a new television and needed it set up. Their computer was acting up and they wanted me to look at it. They were drywalling a basement and needed an extra pair of hands. Not once in about a year did I receive a call asking if I wanted to hang out or go out to dinner. I quickly moved them into the acquaintance category. I would say I have 2 true friends, the kind of people I would bail out of jail for with no questions asked, or who would help me hide a body if it ever came to that. Story 95. I always kind of knew. I was 2 things. A poor kid in a private school and a really aggressive girl. I was only friends with other girls, and they were friends with me because they did not want me to beat them up. I would not have done that even if they were not my friends, but they could not know that. To be part of the conversation, I had to actively pretend to own things I did not, like cable television. I have plenty of stories about fake friends, but it was partly my fault too. Currently, I have a small friend group and I strongly believe they are not fake. Story 96. Fake might not be the right word. It happened when I discovered they had doxed me and had joked about murdering someone I was close to because they worked in law enforcement. The person must have had serious mental issues. Story 97. One of them catfished me for about a month. Almost all of them were in on it. Only one eventually worked up the courage to tell me, and several actively lied when I brought my suspicions to them. They also wanted to slip methylene-dioxymethamphetamine into my drink to see if it would make me less angry about it. Fuck them. Story 98. I have had a couple of these, but the one that stung the most was my best friend who kept me around to feel good about herself. I did not realize this until she ghosted me after nearly 7 years of friendship. She always had a boyfriend, a job she loved, with frequent promotions and a fancy apartment. I was always single and had a dead-end job I hated. While my apartment was nice, it was nowhere near as nice as hers. I was not complaining about my life. I was fine being single and I was working on finding a good job. Fast forward to when I entered a very solid, serious relationship. We are now married. I rented a nice house instead of a small apartment and I have a good, secure job. I am also medicated for anxiety, so I am much happier now. The last time I spoke with her, we had made plans for her to visit. When that date got closer, I texted her to see if she still planned to come, but she did not respond. I reached out several times over the next couple of months, but received no response. From her perspective, I was no longer the friend she felt sorry for, the friend she could compare herself to in order to feel better about her life. Therefore, I was no longer needed. It broke my heart and it took months to get over. Story 99. Seeing on social media that my friends are attending the weddings of our mutual friends. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.